Travis Hunter or the #2 overall pick in the NFL when you were observing him that day?
Once I boarded, I found my seat and I said, "Excuse me, that's my seat." And he said, "Okay." And he stood up and I started to put my bag in the overhead compartment. And he said, "I got that, ma'am. Go ahead and sit down. I got it." And I started smiling and I sat down. And by the time I sat down, everybody else started boarding. And people would stop by and say, "Congratulations, man. Congratulations. A good job, man. Good job." And once everybody went by, I turned to him and I looked at him and I said, "May I ask you a question?" He said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "Who am I sitting next to?" And he smiled and I said, "Really, who am I sitting next to?" And he just kept smiling. I said, "Are you a professional athlete or something?" And he just kept smiling. And I looked at his pants and they were Jaguar pants. I said, "Are you a professional athlete, a professional football player?" And he looked at me and smiled. I said, "Did you just get drafted?" He said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "Oh my goodness." He said, "Yes, ma'am. And my name is Travis." And it still didn't register who he was. I'm like, "Okay, congratulations." So I turned around and waited for us to lift off. And I said, "May I take a selfie with you?" And he said, "Sure, ma'am." So I held my phone up, really didn't know how to take one. He said, "Let me take that and hold it for you." And he took it and cleaned it off. I said, "You're doing just what my boys do. They always clean it off my phone for me." And then he took the selfie and I started smiling and I said, "I'm going to send this to my son." So I sent it to my son and Charles immediately answered. He never immediately answered when I called him. Never. He said, "Mama, how did you sit next to Travis Hunter?" I said, "I'm in first class. I'm sitting next to him now." And he said, "I don't believe you. I'm going to do a FaceTime." He immediately FaceTime. So I said, "Travis, my son wants to say hello to you. He don't believe I'm sitting next to you." So I did. They spoke to each other. And I said, "That's it. This is my time." And I hung up on him. And I just couldn't believe it. And he sent it to his brother and cousins and my 3 brothers. And all of them were trying to call me, but it was too late. We got to take off. I had to go into air mode. It was just wonderful.